Welcome back, everybody. It is the PDPreps Podcast. I'm coming to you October 21st here about 11 a.m. Catching you guys up on exciting week 8 of high school football in the North Bay. Looking ahead to a good week 9 slate of action. The REC Adobe has been delivering some really exciting matchups, and last week same thing. This week probably more of that. Big game of the week coming up this week with Cardinal Newman traveling up to Nevada to play San Marin. I caught the San Marin Windsor game last week. We'll talk about that here a little bit. Kienan, you were over at the St. Vincent Annaley game. We'll talk about that one here a little bit too. Definitely some interesting things to kind of touch back on from week 8. I thought that the Rancho and Newman game, the 14-3 win for Newman was a pretty interesting result. Rancho's offense still working its way, trying to figure some things out, but honestly a pretty good fight against a very good, Newman team. St. Helena too, coming off bye this week. They're undefeated. Looking like a surefire playoff team, but MCL 1 is looking like a that league definitely could still have some question marks here in the last couple of weeks, but I think we'll clean up with some Mason Catarelli watch as he pursues some NCS and local Redwood Empire history here. But before we get into all of that, we'll take a look at our top 10 this week from the North Bay football poll. For the third time this season, Keenan, we have a new number 1 team. Marin Catholic taking over at the number 1 overall spot. The Wildcats got 5 first place votes last week. They have won, both of their REC Adobe openers. They beat San Marin a couple weeks ago, and then they took care of Vintage 31-0 last week. Sorry, to move to 3-4 on the season. But Marin Catholic kind of has been hanging around that 2 or 3 spot kind of all year. Again, they had that ridiculous non-league schedule, and now they're starting to pile up some wins and getting some respect from the voters. So Marin Catholic coming in here, unseating Cardinal Newman at number 1. Wildcats get 77 points, 5 first place votes. Cardinal Newman is our number 2 team this week with 75 points and 3 first place votes. Like we said, Newman took care of Rancho Cotati 14-3 last week. Again, big game coming up this week against San Marin. Very excited for that one. San Marin here coming in here at number 3 again. Actually, consensus number 3. All 8 of our voters had San Marin ranked number 3 in our poll, so that actually should be 64 points. They took care of Windsor again. We'll talk about that game here a little bit. Windsor 35-27. Close game, exciting game. Wasn't really decided till late. Another great kind of high caliber battle here between some top flight, RSC, Adobe teams. But coming in here at number 4, St. Vincent staying pat at number 4. Windsor also staying pat at number 5. St. Vincent 7-0 on the season, got 53 points this week. Shut out Annaley 49-0 last week. I think St. Vincent's winning streak is up to 19, 20 games now, I think. Something crazy like that. Still undefeated on the year too. Again, big game coming up this week. They're hosting Ukiah, and I'd probably say is the game that will decide the RAC Bay title. That game's coming up on Saturday at 2 p.m. Windsor here dropped its second straight game again. They lost to Newman to open league play. Lost to San Marin 35-27 last week. Kind of funny, same score as the San Marin Windsor game last year too. Obviously a very different game. That was a kind of a wild game where San Marin won a big. Windsor had to make a late comeback attempt and just came up short. But definitely a different kind of game plan, or a different game flow for this past matchup. But Windsor, looking to bounce back this week versus Vintage, which comes in number 7. Number 6, actually, this week is American Canyon. American Canyon kind of still shuffling up a little bit here. They took care of Petaluma 35-14 last week. American Canyon got 37 points in our rankings this week. Just 1 point ahead of Vintage. Vintage got 36 points, dropped from number 6 to number 7. Again, they had that 31-0 loss to Marin Catholic. First loss of the year for the Crushers. Again, good test coming up this week, playing at Windsor on Friday. Coming in here at number 8 is Rancho Cotati. Dropped their 3rd straight game, actually. Lost to, again, Cardinal Newman 14-3. Cougars got 26 points in this week's vote. They had that 2-way tie last week for 7th with Vintage, with American Canyon last week. Yeah, Rancho, trying to get off the snide, but tough task this week. They're going to be playing at Marin Catholic on Friday night. Second game for Marin Catholic under the lights over there in Nevada, or over there in Kentfield, which should be cool. Casa Grande, kind of had a midweek or a midseason bye, had another forfeit win over Justin Siena, second straight week that Justin Siena has had to forfeit due to a lack of healthy players. Hopefully, Justin can rally the troops and, get enough guys back to finish out the season, but we'll see how that goes. But Casa, now 3-4 on the year. Again, they started out 0-4, 3 straight wins now for them. They're back in the playoff picture, or at least close to it. Could be a potentially big game this week, playing at Tamalpais on Saturday afternoon. But yeah, the Gauchos coming in here at number 9. This is for the second straight week with 12 points. And then Ukiah rounds out our top 10. We had that weird 3-way tie for 10th last week, but Ukiah kind of stands alone right now. Here at the 10th spot with 6 points. They beat Santa Rosa 50-24 last week. Kind of a bit of again, second straight week where they've had a bit of a slow start and then pulled away in the second half, but beat Santa Rosa 50-24. But, like we said, big game coming up this week, a league deciding game potentially here at St. Vincent on Saturday. Two teams that dropped out, St. Helena, again, was in that 3-way tie for 10th, also with Annalee. Both those teams dropped out. St. Helena is just on the outside looking in with 5 points. Sonoma Valley with 1 point, no points for Annalee this week. So, any notable? I mean, again, third straight or third number 1 team that we've had this year. Again, it's kind of been a mix of San Marin, Cardinal Newman, and Marin Catholic kind of all year, but first time that Marin Catholic has kind of risen to the top here. But anything else kind of jump out to you for our top 10 here this week, Kienan?
Yeah, just kind of, adding on to the whole Marin Catholic thing. I mean, we kind of knew this was going to happen. We knew they were going to pile up some wins at some point. It was just, I think that it was a case of, you couldn't, overlook that like 1-4 record or whatever they had, as the number 1 team, right? That would just optics wise, it would look pretty terrible. Especially when, Newman was piling up wins, Simrin was piling up wins. But Marin Catholic's been doing what they needed to do since league play has started. I don't see them slowing down anytime soon by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to be fascinating. I mean, obviously, looking a little bit ahead. Obviously, we got Marin Catholic Cardinal Newman, the big one of our biggest games in the area, perhaps the biggest game in our area coming up next week, not this week. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But kind of expected this from Cardinal Newman. Kind of knew they were gonna, get those wins piled up, and I do think they are well deserving number 1. To be completely honest with you, I am surprised a little bit. I thought St. Helena was gonna stay in. To be honest with you, obviously they're kind of right on the bubble there, but obviously, they had a bye, so they didn't really have any wins or anything to go to boost their case this week. I should say, but yeah, other than that, those are kind of my two big takeaways. Everything else seems pretty solid.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's too many. I mean, again, I think obviously, the headline here will be definitely, Marin Catholic takes over number 1, but San Marin staying pat here and there at 3 again. Cardinal Newman is just, it's now I feel like, towards the end of the season, it's just going to be Newman and Marin Catholic kind of jockeying for position for that last for the number 1 overall spot. And I feel like, these two teams, barring something crazy happening this week, this will obviously come down to that October 31st game. I think it's Halloween night. It's going to be
Halloween night, baby.
Halloween night. It's going to be at
too.
Cardinal Newman. Yep, at Cardinal Newman should be, again, that'll decide probably who are, end of season, top, number 1 team is going to be. But interesting point too. But
probably.
Yeah, for sure. Same thing that as last year, right? It's like, final, RECW title, came down to that second to last, game of the season, between Newman and Marin Catholic, and still, it looks like it's playing out the exact same way this year. So also interesting enough too, but kind of coming off of last week's result, Marin Catholic is now, for my playoff projections, I now have them in the playoffs. Again, they're a surefire playoff team again, unless something crazy happens and they lose any of these last couple games here, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, again, even if they lose to Cardinal Newman, I still think that they're getting in. And after last week, Now we have Marin Catholic, Cardinal Newman, and San Marin, all who are back in the Open Division, in the playoff projections for this week. So, RAC Adobe kind of is looking like it might be a 3-bid league team again, but I think the Newman or the San Marin Cardinal Newman game will be fascinating. I think Newman and Marin Catholic are surefire Open teams. It's just kind of, is San Marin going to kind of hang in there and maybe get the 8th spot or something? So we'll see how that goes, but. Other than that, I don't think there are too many surprises, but again, this is, these last couple weeks should be pretty exciting here. I mean, it's crazy. We're already in week 9. We have, week 9, 10, 11. We have 3 more weeks left of the regular season until playoffs start. So, so a lot left to determine here, but should be a very exciting end of the regular season here. But, well, switching gears, let's move into our kind of some of our takeaways and analysis pieces here from week 8. But I was over at our game of the week, San Marin and Windsor. It was a pretty exciting game, honestly, and it was one of these games where I was hanging out with with another reporter on the sideline, and it seemed like there were so many instances or situations where San Marin could have just won this game going away, and Windsor just kind of kept staying in it. Again, final score was 35-27. Windsor got a touchdown. They were trailing the entire game. Shootout to kind of start. Windsor got a touchdown, late in the second quarter to make it a 1-score game at halftime. And San Marin would then go up 2 scores in the second half. Windsor would score again to make it a 1-score game. It was just kind of that little back and forth, basically, for the rest of the game. But this is a game that it seemed like San Marin easily could have won this game by 3 scores, and Windsor just super gritty and stayed in it. But kind of my big takeaway from this game was just, you saw this too 2 weeks ago in the Windsor Newman game, but Windsor's offense is a little one-dimensional right now. And, this has kind of been, I even preseason, DJ Sexton, their head coach, and said, he's like, we're going to be a five wide spread team. We're going to pass the ball. We have a ton of good, wide receivers, and, we're going to make all these teams, guard us on the outside. And, that worked out super well, obviously, in non-league play. But now in league play, again, when you're kind of banged up on the line, when, they're dealing with a couple of key injuries, they've kind of really, leaned into this, to this passing attack. And honestly, again, it's been working well. I mean, again, in the Newman game, they were in that game till the end. Same thing in the San Marin game. Carter Vos had his best passing game as a high school quarterback so far. I had him down for 351 passing yards. The official scorekeeper had him down for 381. But either way, he had a great passing performance. But that came at the cost of Windsor's rushing attack. I had Windsor down for only 6 total rushing yards on the game. Again, there were, I think, 3 or 4 sacks that Windsor took that hurt them in that category. But I think that's back-to-back weeks where Windsor has had less than 10 total rushing yards in games. So, again, their passing attack is probably as good as any in the area. I mean, I had Daniel Rolovich down for just over 200 passing yards for San Marin, and he's a Division I, recruit, or commit, San Jose State, but Carter Vos, went toe to toe with him, and I'd say played a better quarterback passing game than he did, but again, it's just, this rushing attack for Windsor, it just makes their offense a bit one-dimensional. And that was something that Sexton had said kind of after the game, is he's like, we got to figure something out, in the running game to kind of open up that passing game more. But it's going to be tougher kind of going forward. They have a couple key injuries on the line, and then the big one was their leading rusher for the year, Marco Sanchez. I believe it looked like he hurt something pretty bad, a leg injury. He came out of the game I think it was late in the second quarter. Did not return. Had his whole leg wrapped up in ice and had to be carted off the feet, or carted kind of off the sideline and stuff when he was done. So he's hoping he can come back, but it doesn't look promising. So their leading rusher is now out, and again they have some other guys who can carry the ball and get some yardage and stuff, but again with a banged up line and with your top rusher now out, it's like Windsor's probably going to have to lean into this passing identity even more. And this week is going to be an interesting test. Vintage is super big, super deep up front. They will just run the ball through your face, and so we'll kind of see if Windsor can if Windsor's passing attack can, take advantage, or, if they're kind of going to be, hurt up front, by some of these injuries and, by kind of some of that lack of depth that they have at running back. So that's just been notable for me the last couple of weeks is, again, Carter Vos is for sure emerging. He's getting better every week, it looks like. But, if Windsor can't run the ball, it could be a tough slog here for them to close out the season. But I don't know. What did you kind of make of their, passing versus rushing attack against Newman? I mean, again, I think that Newman and San Marin, both big up front, both, again, passing, San Marin is more of a passing offense. Windsor or Newman, obviously more, more of a rushing offense, but both of their defensive lines are very stout, very solid. And Windsor just has not been able to move the ball much on the ground. But I don't know. Do you kind of have some of like any similar concerns about that? Or is this just like a, hey, two tough matchups, like it is what it is kind of thing?
Yeah, I would kind of say both because I thought their line did actually, their line did pretty well against Newman in giving Carter Vos time. Obviously, rushing, Carter Vos can do some things with his legs and things like that. I mean, he might have been the leading rusher in your game, I'm not sure, but he was certainly close to the leading rusher in the Newman game. But I honestly, yes, the passing attack is very good, and yes, like the wideouts are very good. But I also will credit part of Windsor's success through the air against Newman to a pretty much a pitch perfect game plan. Because Newman's defensive backs like to sit back rather than press back, and it's easy to kind of get those little slant routes underneath, and that's what Windsor was doing. On like often and it was working. So yes, I totally hear what you're saying with the running game. I mean, I don't remember what numbers they had rushing wise against Newman, but I totally hear what you're saying. I could totally see what the point you're making as well. But I do agree with the fact that I think their passing attack is one of the best in the area.
Right.
And pit for pat with all these other programs and stuff like that. It's definitely up there. But I wouldn't have said it's a concern with how the passing attack played per se, but judging based off your analysis and things like that, it's might become, I wouldn't say an issue, but it might become obviously, something that's been holding him back a little bit, especially against some of these bigger teams that like to get after it on the line with the vintages coming up. Rancho's defense is very good, especially
Yeah.
their secondary.
They still,
So
they still have to play Murray Catholic too, obviously.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I totally hear your points. I think their passing attack has been very good, and I think it's been very good enough to get them this far. But obviously, league is kind of opening up some holes and showing, kind of letting us know that look, you got to have a full game if you want to win this league. So,
Yeah.
I do think, things need to be changed here coming up.
Yeah, and I mean we'll see. I mean it's like you said too, it's like they've been in both of these games, the last 2 weeks, even with having a non-existent rushing attack. So obviously, their passing game can keep these in games, but it is just like this war of attrition that is the RAC Adobe, right? It's like, I mean, we go through this gauntlet of teams and everyone has a good defense, everyone has a good offense, and it's really like who's the most healthy, at the end of the season, essentially. So yeah, I mean we'll see. I mean, again, we still have 3 weeks left in the regular season here. So, you know, I mean, again, this passing offense, I feel like can keep them in games, can certainly win them games. But, again, against teams who are going to kind of shove it down their throat, right? On teams like Vintage or teams like Marin Catholic, right? Or even Rancho, this could be a thing where it's like, all right, how is Windsor going to kind of adjust? And that is one good thing that Sexton is very good at, with
Yes.
Windsor is is
Agreed.
adjusting his game plan for his personnel and his offense and what things are and what's working and what's not. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But definitely something that I've kind of noticed the last couple of weeks for Windsor is just kind of the this one dimensional offense. But again, they put up 20 points against Newman. I think that was the most that Newman's allowed in a game I think this season
They were up
since.
13-0. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not like
Yeah,
they're
I
not
mean,
putting
again,
up points.
it's worked out. It's kept them in games
Yeah.
here, and it's same thing against San Marin. I think that was the most points San Marin's allowed. I think, I mean, again, after the Marin Catholic game that they had played. So, Windsor's offense still, it's fine. Through the air, it's just maybe they have to figure some some stuff out rushing wise, but we will see. But Kienan, you were over at the St. Vincent Annalise game. This is an Annalise team that again, like I think we had thought, or we've been very high on them, the last couple of weeks, and then they had that letdown spot against Maria Carrillo. But that game actually also, the Carrillo game actually also delivered more of a loss for them in the fact that they apparently, they lost their starting quarterback, Matthew Medina, who
Not
we had
apparently, they
highlighted
did.
as we had highlighted him as a potential mid-season player of the year kind of watch list guy, but he suffered a broken hand that week, and so now he might be out for the year. So that's a huge impact for Annalise here.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're a completely different team without him.
Yeah.
And Friday night showed that. Obviously, Caden Lewis took over the starting quarterback role, and he did the best he can. But with the dual threat ability that Medina has, it's night and day with that Annalise team, and especially the aerial attack and the rushing attack. He complements Brance Jacobs really well, and Jacobs couldn't really get anything going. Um, which is unfortunate. I'm pretty sure Annalise was also out some starting linemen this week as well, if I remember correctly. So it's just the worst possible timing for the Tigers to really have this kind of luck. Um, Going into a week they're playing the two-time returning state champion St. Vincent. Um, St. Vincent coming in, still dressing 20 players. They were without star tight end and San Diego State commit Jack Ellis. He's going to be out for the next couple weeks.
Right.
From what I've heard with the AC joint sprain. So it's still 20 players. But it was a good game, for quote unquote the other guys to step up. Not those big St. Vincent names that we're accustomed to hearing. Not that like Mason Catarelli's, Gabe Casanovas is, Jack Ellis is. Obviously Mason Catarelli. We'll talk about him towards the end of the pod here. He had another solid game, 8 carries, 118 yards, touchdown. Things like that. But it was all about the other guys for St. Vincent. I mean, it was they made it work to the tune of 49 points. Let's talk about the Chaput brothers. George and Barrett had over almost nearly like combined 130 yards of receiving between the both of them with 3 touchdowns. They're going to be huge coming in defensively. The big momentum change, if there was any change of momentum happened like in Annalise's first possession, they were forced to punt. Levi Kennedy breaks open, blocks the punt in the end zone, falls on it, boom. 14-0 early. And then kind of just the brakes fell off from there, and St. Vincent was just rolling. Even backup quarterback Willie Peterson didn't even warm up, and his first pass was a 62-yard bomb to George Chaput for a touchdown. So, I think for a team like St. Vincent, who is obviously, going through some transfer things and only dressing 20 guys week in and week out, I think the most important thing for them is, getting as many guys as they can this kind of experience, because if they want to make another deep postseason run, if they want to win league again, they're going to have to, rely on that experience and rely on these other guys.
Right.
And I think this was a good game for that, considering how they played. I think, obviously this is going to be a much bigger test this week against Ukiah. Obviously, for the past couple of years, 2 or 3 years, these two teams have been the one and two in the league. I know when Ukiah's way a couple of years ago, last couple of years it's been St. Vincent. So, these two always go at it, but I think it's a much bigger test. But, I think it was a good game for those other guys for St. Vincent to step up and show what they're really about, and show like, hey, St. Vincent isn't all just the Catarelli and Casanova show. We have these other guys here too that can really do it. So St. Vincent gets it done. Another shutout for the defense, 49 nothing. And remain undefeated overall and undefeated in league play. From what I saw in the Max Preps rankings, I don't think they moved anywhere. I think they're staying pat at 10. No, they moved. Okay.
No,
We'll
no,
talk
no,
about
no,
that.
no. They're still at 10. They're still at 10.
Oh, they're still at 10. Yeah. So, you're shaking your head at me like, nope, you're wrong. So,
Oh,
but,
sorry, I meant to nod. Sorry.
no, no, no. Yeah. So they're staying pat at, put at 10. A lot of people were wondering how they were going to go, especially with the San Marin Windsor, result. But, yeah, undefeated in league play, undefeated overall. And, seems like they're good. They're continuing to roll, Gus, ahead of this massive matchup in Petaluma on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, a couple notes to add to that. So St. Vincent is now allowed just one touchdown in their last 3 games. They pitched shutouts in their last 2. I mean, again, not a huge surprise against Santa Rosa and Annalee. Ukiah game that could, should be very interesting this week. Ukiah has had a bit of a strange couple weeks here. The last 2, they've had some very kind of slow starts against, it wasn't. Excuse me. They had some slow starts against Montgomery and against Santa Rosa games that they ended up winning pretty handily. But I mean, you really can't afford to have a slow start against a team like St. Vincent. But
Okay.
kind of an interesting note too to this game is that St. Vincent I think is now 20. Man, they're like 27 or 28-1, I think, at home over the last 5 years. And that one loss was to Ukiah back in 2023. That was the game that ended up deciding the RSC Bay title that year. But yeah, I
They were
mean,
up big at halftime too in that game
they were a
because he
bit,
was
yeah, I think
leading.
they were up 21-0 at halftime or something like that. And Ukiah made some crazy second half comeback and won 25-21. But, last year, St. Vincent won up in Mendocino 35 to 24. And yeah, this Ukiah team has a lot of talent, hasn't been as sharp probably as they would like to kind of start games, and you really can't have a slow start against a team like St. Vincent. Even with a team dressing 20 guys and not having their San Diego State commit Jack Ellis, but like you said, it's like their depth has come a long way. This year,
Mhm.
the Chaput brothers, even like a guy like Dylan Chalou, guys like this, it's like. I remember watching a lot of these guys play in 7-on-7 stuff over the over the summertime. When a lot of their kind of studs weren't really playing, either for injury or they were out doing recruiting visits and stuff. And it was like, man, these guys were hanging with Newman or hanging with Windsor, right? And this is like, the kind of, what I would call, I guess, their B squad, but really, it's like they don't really have a B squad. Everybody can really contribute.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, yeah, I mean their depth is better. Their upper crust of talent is better. Their defense has been really good. So, yeah, St. Vincent is still rolling. I think again, what is that? 20 straight wins now. 19. I think it's 20 straight wins
Yeah,
now, which is
some up
state
there.
leading,
Yeah, for sure.
just crazy. So, yeah, great. Again, another kind of no doubter win there for St. Vincent. Again, not a huge surprise, but yeah, still rolling. Big game coming up this week. Switching gears here, but I did want to talk about the Newman Rancho game a little bit here, but final score is 14-3. I think a score that or a deficit I think that a lot of people thought would be a lot bigger. Scores 14-3 at halftime. Rancho led 3-0 after the first quarter, and then Newman got a couple touchdowns in the second quarter, and that was kind of all the offense that we got in this game. So, yeah, a bit of again, this is the Rancho defense, right? Kind of come into play. They held Newman to 234 total yards, which is a pretty solid mark for a Newman team that's been,
Uh-huh.
scoring the ball pretty easily, the last couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, just kind of a lower scoring game, a defensive battle. And I was reading through some of the quotes from Rancho head coach Garrett Tailing after the game, and he was like, "I thought that this was our best game of that we played like all year." He was like, despite the outcome, like he's like, our defense was incredible. They had their backup quarterback Jackson Rode come in, completed 13 of 16 passes. He had a pick, but like, a guy, a junior backup coming in against, a top 5 team in the entire section, top 20 or top 30 team in the entire state coming in and performing decently well.
Mhm.
Definitely a good sign for Rancho, but yeah, I mean, also again of note too, Newman, we mentioned St. Vincent, still has a couple transfers who are ineligible. Against sit-out period ended late September, so they're dealing with some kind of issue over there with players not being cleared yet. But same thing with Cardinal Newman. A couple of guys, obviously, like Montgomery transfer Owen Graff, the Hawaiian, the 4-star junior or sophomore lineman King Pitt's not eligible. Same thing in this game. None of those guys played, so I'll be curious to see again. With with the game coming up here at San Marin, if any of those guys will be suited up. But also of note too, I don't know this for sure. We're recording this pod Tuesday, but I have seen or I have heard that this San Marin game was a game that's been circled as a potential return for sophomore quarterback LT Renamosa. So he again suffered that collarbone injury first week of the season against Manteca, has been out since then. Carmine Guevara has done a great job kind of filling in for him.
Fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's led them to 6 straight wins now. Really good, really good season for him. Kind of filling in the gaps there for hurt LT. But yeah, I mean, if he comes back this week against San Marin, that's a huge, huge shot in the arm for them. Again, they've done pretty well without him the last couple of weeks, but just adding him back into the mix would be a huge, huge, mid-season boost for them. And again, it'd be awesome to see, LT kind of get healthy and come back this year, because I think people were kind of worried that after that collarbone injury, if he'd be able to come back this year. But yeah, that'll be certainly, something to watch for this coming week. But yeah, I mean, again, it's been a tough couple weeks for Rancho. They I think they've still only scored. They've scored, what is that, 17 total points over their final 3 games. Again, the offense has just kind of stalled out a little bit. And again, it doesn't get much easier these next couple weeks. They finish out league with at Marin Catholic, at Windsor, and then at San Marin. So if they can still win any, like, one of these 3 wins, I think that they'll for sure be a playoff team. But if they don't, they might have to, kind of fall back onto, maybe their division record or their max preps rankings. I currently still have them in the playoffs, but again, they're 4-3 right now. If they finish 4-6, even 5-5, that might be a bit of a tougher road to climb here. So we'll see. But I mean, again, just kind of, reading through the quotes that Gehrig said, he's, after the game, it was like, he was, proud of the effort, thought that they played really well. And, this is a Rancho team that never backs down from a fight, right? They always, elevate their game to, for their opponent and whoever they play. So I'm not giving up on Rancho yet, but they definitely got to, steal at least one win here or something, to really ensure that they'll be playing in the postseason here in about a month. So yeah, that's what I got on that game. But Kienan, you had some thoughts on St. Helena here actually too before we move on.
Well, yeah, I kind of wanted to jump back in and kind of talk about a few things with Newman. Regarding the LT Redamosa thing, if he comes back this week, just getting that, 1 game back experience before the Marin Catholic game, kind of getting that rust off, that's going to be huge. But if he does come back for Marin Catholic and doesn't come back this week, regardless, that is a shot in the arm. One thing I will say to Newman, and, I do want to give credit to Rancho's defense here, but, not good start for Newman's offense. The first quarter seemed to have been their boogeyman this year, and against the Marin Catholics and the San Marins and all the open teams that are in the NCS, you just can't start a first quarter scoreless. So they're definitely gonna have to clean that up if they want to really move forward. And I've faith that they will. But the last real time they've had a very strong fourth quarter, I'm pretty sure, was against it was 30 points against
Might have been Armia or something.
Yeah, it was something like that. No, it was O'Dowd. Excuse me.
Okay.
I don't think they had any first quarter points against Armillo even. So, definitely need to start better for the Newman brass. But I'm pretty sure they would turn it around. That's why I think this week is so fascinating. Because I feel like whoever's going to get on the front foot early, has a real advantage in the game. For sure. But yeah, just going back to Rangers defense, I think they're still one of the best in the area. Garrett Tailing always has those guys ready to play. They're going to keep him in games no matter what. So hopefully the offense can kind of turn it around, before the end of the regular season. But I just kind of want to touch base, because we've already talked about all the REC league, Redwood Empire Conference leagues, and kind of touched on them a bunch, but we haven't been able to really touch on the NCL one, which is always a fascinating title race, by the way, no matter what. And we have kind of a pretty pretty local team at the top in St. Helena. Not many people thought they were going to be at the top. Everybody thought it was going to be like Kelseyville or Middletown or Willits and stuff like that. But St. Helena has all of a sudden just come out on fire. They are 7-0, undefeated in league play. They're averaging just under 39 points per game offensively. Defense has pitched 2 shutouts this year. And they already passed their first tests in Kelseyville. They have their 2 probably biggest tests of the season
I'd say
coming up.
Middletown was probably their biggest test, which they won that game on that last second touchdown. I think with like 2 seconds left or something like that. But
Yeah. I'm also going by the standings too, so they have 2 huge tests that could ultimately decide the fate of the NCL1 title race coming up here with Willits and Clear Lake. Willits, destroyed Clear Lake. I think it was 36-7 or something like that. So, both of those teams have 1 loss in league play. St. Helena is still at 0. So, it's going to be fascinating to see how this title race ends up. St. Helena has all the cards in their hands. It's their title to lose technically. If they win out, they win league, because I know they finished with Upper Lake, who's like 0-6 or something like that. So, couple of big tests coming up for St. Helena, but props to what they're doing over there in northern Napa County. They really stepped it up this year. I know Dean Summers having a good year. Their quarterback Johnny, I can't pronounce his last name.
Covarrubias.
Covarrubias. There you go. He's having a heck of a year too. So, props to the Saints. And they should be a surefire playoff team. Especially with the new rules put into place. But props to the Saints, big couple weeks ahead for them, coming off a bye week, sitting pretty, should be recharged, ready to go. And I'm excited to see how the NCL1 race kind of finishes out.
Yeah, it's a really unique race because I don't think there's any other league as big as the NCL1, and a lot of that is because of history, right? This is these are a lot of teams that have historically always been in the same league. You have your Lake County leagues with all of the Lake schools, Kelseyville, Middletown, and then you go up all the way up to Fort Bragg too, and then you throw St. Helena too in that mix. But I don't think there's it. Like, I think this is the largest league in the entire North Coast section. They have I think they have 7 or 8 teams or something like crazy, maybe even more than that actually. Might have even 9, but they have 9 teams in their league, which is crazy. Which means that every team, which means that they have 8 league games, which I don't think there's any other team or any other
preseason
league.
games. That's ridiculous.
It's crazy. I know, it's crazy. Well, and again, the NCL1 was obviously the biggest story, I'd say, last year for the NCS playoffs, right? You have, I think it was only Kelseyville that made the playoffs, and obviously, you had the famous Willits situation where they went 8-2, finished second place in league and didn't make the playoffs. So, you mentioned the kind of rule change. The NCS has implemented a new wins-based playoff or amendment for the playoffs. So now regular season wins are counted a lot more, or at least they carry, I'd say, the most weight of any of the kind of playoff eligibility statistics or categories. So what that's going to do is it's for sure going to allow a lot of these smaller NCL1 teams to make the playoffs. I currently have the Saints projected in Division 6 as the 3 seed.
Are they they're base Division 7? Yes,
they're base Division 7. Yeah, I think all the teams in the NCL1 are all base Division 7. But yeah, I have St. Helena. They're the highest ranked team right now. I think at number 46 in the NCS, but I have them at number 3 in Division 6. Funny enough, actually behind, I have Petaluma number 1 in Division 6 and Sonoma number 2. St. Helena number 3, Willits number 4. Again, this is also after week 8, so there's a lot of stuff that will still need to be shaken out, but that's just kind of the playoff picture right now. But yeah, the Saints have been really good this year, no doubt about it. You mentioned their kind of scoring differential. Their defense has been really good. They had that super gritty win against Middletown. They won that game. I think it was on, they got like a late turnover and then scored, I think, with 2 seconds left to win that game by a touchdown. But I think it's that Willits game that is going to kind of come down and decide who, this league champ is. But I will say, unlike last year where it was like you either have to win league or you're not in playoffs. That's not the case this year. So again, even if the Saints do kind of stumble here down the stretch, which I don't think they will, they're still probably definitely going to be a playoff team. So it's been a very good season for them. Again, really good senior class they've had. They've had some really good junior contributors too. I think they have, Julian Earls, their leading rusher, is 740 yards, 7 touchdowns. Covarrubias has rushed for 8 touchdowns. They don't pass the ball a ton. This is a traditionally very run heavy, program. But yeah, they've been doing great. They're averaging 264 rushing yards a game, as a squad. So yeah, I mean they're moving the ball well. They're playing good defense. Yeah, and if they can get past Willits, I think this NCL1 title is theirs. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely have been a fun season for St. Helena, which also was kind of my old stomping grounds. I mean, I didn't graduate from there, but I covered St. Helena pretty intimately when I was working for the Napa Register. That was one of my beats that I was down there for. So cool to see the Saints have some success. But yeah, actually, funny enough, when I was there, I think it was my first year was there. This is kind of, I think, the first year that Trent Herzog had taken over at St. Vincent, and St. Helena played St. Vincent in the first round of the NCS playoffs, and St. Helena won very handily. They had a I think it was actually Kai Hall's freshman year at St. Vincent, and I'm doing this to kind of transition into our next point. But St. Helena also had this incredible running back, Ivan Robledo, who's actually now a linebacker for SRJC. I think he finished, I think, with I think he's the all-time leading rusher for St. Helena in school history, which is a pretty cool stat to have because they've had some really good running backs in the past. But yeah, just kind of a funny snapshot 7 years ago about what things look like, in Division 7 or in Division 6, whatever it was back then. So, but yeah, transitioning now. Speaking of Kai Hall, kind of we'll finish up a little bit with our Mason Catarelli update. Last week, 118 rushing yards. He only had 1 touchdown. He is, again, we're keeping track of this because he is in pursuit of the all-time NCS touchdowns record of 99, held by Antioch's Najee Harris, and he's also closing in on the all-time Redwood Empire rushing record set by Kai Hall, St. Vincent player, with 5,740. Well, after last week, Mason, again, only the 1 touchdown. I think that might be the fewest touchdowns he's scored in a game this year, which is kind of funny. But he has 94 touchdowns for his career. He is now 5 away from Najee Harris's record. I would have to imagine he's going to get that in the next couple of weeks, if not the next 2 weeks. I mean, if I don't think he's going to score 5 touchdowns against Ukai, he might. But if he doesn't, I'd say that's a surefire record he's going to break against Montgomery the week after.
Mm-hmm.
Also, his 118 rushing yards now brings him over 5,000 rushing yards for his career. He has 5,062 rushing yards. He is now 678 away from Kai Hall's all-time record of 5,740. So he's getting close, and I think it's just a matter of time. Again, we have 3 weeks left of the regular season. St. Vincent closes the season out with, Ukiah this week, Montgomery next week, and then, I think it's Montgomery next week, and then Carrillo to finish out the season. So he's got 3 weeks. I feel like he can break this record over the next 3 weeks, and if not, St. Vincent is probably not going to be an open division team. I'd say that they're probably going to be a Division 5, the top seed in Division 5. And they'll probably have at least a couple more games in that. I mean, they'll probably have, let's be honest, St. Vincent will be a very heavy favorite to win the Division 5 NCS title. There are some teams that have been kind of making some waves the last couple weeks.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Well, I've been very impressed with Ferndale the last couple weeks. Ferndale is also a Division 7 team. They won the state title 2 years ago. Last year they made it to the NCS. I think it was Division 7 or Division 7 or 6 title game. They've lost, but they finished as runners up. This year, again, they have not played
champion Arcade, I'm pretty sure, right?
I think they lost to Moreau Catholic in that championship game. Possibly.
NCS.
They played Arcata this last week. On the year, and so again, St. Vincent, let's just be honest here, they played a much harder schedule. They have beaten some much better teams. But I'm looking at Ferndale. Ferndale right now is 7-0 on the year. They have scored the last 3 weeks, they have scored 70 plus points in all 3 of their games. They beat Hoopa Valley 73-0. They beat McKinleyville 79-0, and they beat Arcata 72-0. Now, I don't think Arcata quarterback Luke Lemke played last week, but still 72-0. 3 straight games of 70 points is nuts. On the year, this is what's craziest. Ferndale is 7-0 on the year. They have outscored opponents 450-0. Ferndale has not allowed a single point yet on defense this year. Now, again,
that's absurd.
Now, again, they haven't played the hardest of schedules. They are currently ranked number 23 in the NCS. I have them projected as the 2 seed in Division 5 behind St. Vincent. St. Vincent is number 10. Ferndale's number 23 in the NCS. So again, I still think St. Vincent will be the heavy favorite in D5, but Ferndale, they've been turning some heads, and I've definitely taken notice of what they've done the last couple weeks.
They've turned your head,
So
have they, guys?
they have turned my head. They looked they've looked mighty impressive. Again, we can harp on strength of schedule all you want, but if you're beating Team 72-0, that's something to take note of for sure. So, yeah, I mean, again, the D7 teams, there are some interesting teams this year. I mean, again, St. Vincent will still, I feel like, be a heavy favorite, but you have Ferndale in here at 7-0 with this insane, differential. You have St. Bernard's, who's been really, really good. They're top 30 in the NCS right now too. You have Salesian, who's top 30 in the NCS. They obviously play a very, a tough schedule for a Division 7 team, being down in the, in the East Bay, or in Richmond. So yeah, I mean, again, I still feel like when it's all said and done, St. Vincent, will still be a very heavy favorite for D5, and that'll probably give them a couple more games for Catarelli to have a chance to break these records. But the D7 talent pool is deep this year, so I think it should be a pretty fun late round playoff games there for whoever ends up in the Division 5 playoffs. So
I agree.
um,
That's what
so yeah.
makes it so fascinating about the up 2 divisions, down 2 divisions, whole thing. So
Yep. Well, that's all. I think that's all we got. Any other shout outs you wanted to give this week, Keenan? Not a whole lot of other, I feel like, North Bay people that have been doing a whole lot. Luke Haggard's been banged up. He'd missed this last game for the Buccaneers. Andrew Vaughn, Jason Lane, those guys are out of the
Justin
playoffs.
Brule, though.
Well, he wasn't on the Blue Jays roster for the ALCS. We'll see if he is for the World Series, but yeah, not a whole lot of local connections kind of left, I feel like, in professional baseball or football right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, basketball season's starting up. I don't think there's any connections there, unfortunately. So I think that's all we got for you guys this week. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching and stuff. We'll keep you updated on the whole playoff scenario. Gus has his weekly playoff projections that he does so well now that he's figured it out amongst another rule change.
I think I have. I don't know. It's like this week's funky. I've had to bounce it off like 3 or 4 people, and it's like everyone's still a little different. So still working through some kinks, but I think I should have that up hopefully either today or tomorrow. So
Yeah, so anyways, he is last year he got pretty spot on. So we like to keep you guys as updated as much as we can. But yeah, that's all we got for this week. Again, Friday night football coverage. We'll be covering some key volleyball games around the area this week as well. So thank you guys for watching, listening, however you consume this content, and we will see you guys next week.
see you next week.